All right, let's pretend it snowed and we've done fun
Okay.
things.
Yes.
Okay.
Yay, so many fun things.
Hey,
Ate a
Catherine.
lot. Hi.
How has the snow been for you?
Oh, gosh. Snow is good. I'll take snow over ice any day. It just feels so much more manageable. And my kids have more things that they can do in the snow. Although Thomas loved the ice because he really tried to ice skate. He really tried to ice skate on our front driveway, our front sidewalk.
We didn't think about that, but
It worked because, you had to add some water and let it freeze. So we had to make it completely treacherous for anyone who would walk up our front walkway. But it was all good.
that's amazing. We didn't think about that. We did have a large patch of ice that they were ice skating on with just like their tennis shoes on.
Yep.
But we didn't pull the skates out. That would have been a good idea.
Yeah, if it was thick enough, like he broke through a couple of times, and I'm sure he destroyed the blades a little bit, but he's fine.
I did see a lot of ponds in North Carolina are not thick enough.
Right.
Do not use them.
Right? Well, because as Southerners, we see this little sheen and we're like, oh my gosh, we can go skating on the pond now. Nope, you go right through.
One of my friends in high school had a pond outside of his house, and in West Virginia, it's cold like this for months, and so it does get, the ponds will get thick enough. So we would ice skate on his pond. But the best thing we would do was he had a big long hill. It was super steep going down to the pond, and we would sled down the hill, and you would sled and you would hit the pond with the ice, and it would take off. And so you would zoom
Shoot
across
you.
the pond and then go halfway up the hill on the other side. It was the most fun.
Yeah.
But we were in high school, so I should say,
do not put your 5-year-old on a sled and do this kind of thing.
safety first.
Right. Right. But I do feel now we have had enough winter weather. Again, this North Carolinian is saying it. It can be spring.
Yeah.
We can go ahead and do that. Come on, February.
Yeah.
Be a team player.
And just behind the scenes, we're recording this before the groundhog has made his official pronouncement.
Right,
so
right.
I'm voting. I can never remember. Is it 6 more weeks? You see the shadow, it's 6 more?
Sees the shadow, it's 6 weeks. Doesn't see the shadow, it's an early spring.
Okay.
But I want to know who is asking him. Who is determining that he did in fact see his shadow? Did anyone discuss this with him? Maybe he freaks out because a bunch of people are looking at him, not because he sees a shadow. Let's just discuss.
That's a distinct possibility. Also, does the forecast of a groundhog in Pennsylvania apply to North Carolina?
Right.
And is the zoo using some sort of other animal, or does it also use a groundhog?
That's a great question. I think it's all groundhog based.
Do they have a groundhog at the North Carolina Zoo?
We have one in the garden that Larry, I'm sure, would donate because it eats veggies from time to time.
That's what we should do. We should find the groundhog and
we should pull him out. We could have our own groundhog. We got to get him a little hat, a little mayoral looking hat, because I think that's what Puxatawny has.
We could let people cast their votes on what's going to happen and pull the
photo ops.
Fundraiser idea, in case you wondered how those come about.
There we go. It's a good one, too. Watch out, Session. This might be coming to you.
I feel like Session probably wants us to read the Bible now. So this week we're looking at the raising of Lazarus, which is it is a story that is attested in all 4 Gospels. So this clearly happened, I guess is a way of saying it in some form.
Significant.
It's a significant event. The resurrecting of someone.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, it is a significant event. So I think as we read this, what we want to look for is what's the difference? Because John doesn't tell it in the same way. So what's the difference between this story and what we think, we know the story in our head because we hear it all the time.
Right.
But what is different about this story that we're hearing this time? And to reorient ourselves, Mary and Martha, who we hear about in a very contentious.
Yeah. I do love it that it's the women are bickering about this thing. What? No.
Yeah. And the woman who does all the work is the one who's
the problem.
Is the problem, right? So with all that baggage, Mary and Martha are the main drivers of this story, and so they were the sisters of Lazarus. And so as we hear this story, let's think about what that wants to tell us. So maybe let's read 1 through. Let's read 1 through 7.
Okay. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "The sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago," I was supposed to stop at that.
That's all good.
"Let us go back to Judea." The end. We'll get to the rest later.
Yeah. So this is an interesting setup. What did we
Yeah.
notice about what's happening in this story so far?
Is this the only gospel where Jesus kind of says, "Hey, this is part of the plan"?
Yeah.
Like-
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's fascinating what Jesus says in response to this story.
Right.
Yeah. So Mary is the one who anoints Jesus with a fragrant oil and wipes his feet with her hair. In the other gospel, she does this right before he's about to die.
I was just about to say this feels early.
It's early.
Like it's like has this? I actually took a second. I was like, wait a minute, did that already happen?
Right. I'm curious. I'm not sure. I didn't look it up beforehand. Like, is this a remember, like a marker to remember that when it happens, or like did it already happen, or was this like an aside? Because sometimes in John, there's like a little aside of like things that would have been if you were around at the time, you would have known. Remember when this happened? But it's not in the gospel anywhere. So I'm curious, like, is this something we're going to find out, or should we have already known this? I don't know.
You know what? I was looking back at some of the devotion scriptures, and I'm pretty sure it happens after. It's in John 12.
Okay.
So it happens. So yeah, he kind of.
Yeah.
Well then.
Just so you
Thanks
know.
for foreshadowing,
Yeah.
John.
But that's a confusing way to foreshadow.
Right.
But, so Lazarus is sick. This is an issue because sickness, when your average lifespan is like 40,
Right.
sickness is a big deal. This is
Right.
not something to mess around with. And so he had to have been sick enough that they sent a message to Jesus.
Right.
It also tells us something about the relationship between Jesus and Mary and Martha and Lazarus, right?
Right.
Because it had to have been somebody that Jesus cared enough about that they thought he would rush to his side.
Right.
And so, like, who are the people in your life where you would rush to the bedside?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
family level
Right.
things here. And so, are they family in some ways? But it doesn't tell us ever that, like, they're cousins or something.
Right.
But if not, then it's somebody who's not a disciple of Jesus in the traveling troupe, who is a friend close enough to Jesus to be someone that he would care enough to go and travel and see. That's very
Right.
interesting.
Right. Right. Because I'd be curious, like, how many messages did you get about people dying otherwise? You know, like,
Yeah.
the word is out by this
Oh,
point,
good
right?
point,
The
yeah.
word is out that Jesus is who Jesus is. I'm just super curious. Yeah, this particular one is lifted up as an important story because of whatever the relationship is. How many other messages got to him like that? Or how many other people sought this same, I don't know.
I mean, that could explain some of his, like, oh, I don't need to go right now.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, does he have to do some triaging?
Right.
Because I'm picturing, like, in a hospital, right? There's
Yeah.
a triage nurse whose job it is to be like, well, that person's in more mortal danger than that person. So the doctor
Right.
needs to see this person first.
Right.
And so is that, like, how many times does Jesus get a letter and he has to sort of be like,
Right.
no, I need to do this first, and this person's
Yep.
going to live for another 7 days, and so it's
Right.
fine, and I'll go see them. And it's like, is that what's happening?
Right. I don't know. Is that being too pragmatic of Jesus?
Right.
Like,
And how does he know it's not fatal?
right.
This illness is not fatal.
Right.
It is for the glory of God's Son, or the glory of God, so that God can be glorified through it.
Right.
But we know Lazarus dies. So, like, how, from a practical point of view, is Jesus delaying long enough that Lazarus dies
Right.
good?
Because if Lazarus doesn't die, he doesn't get to raise him, and like this is a miracle that doesn't. I've been really conflicted about, in looking at some of the other passages and studying, I'm feeling conflicted about the whole concept of believing because you saw it versus believing because Jesus said he was who he was. And Jesus seems to waffle sometimes back and forth. Not waffle. Well, yeah, no, I think it's waffling between why don't you believe? I've told you to believe versus look at what I'm doing. Like I'm like, well, duh. Which one? Which one is it? Do you want us to believe because we've seen, or do you want us to believe because you told us to?
And I wonder if that's Jesus or if that's John.
Right. That's true.
I wonder.
I'll blame Jesus.
Probably. I mean, wrong. John's clearly putting it in Jesus' mouth here. So John wants us to understand that it's Jesus who's who is at the root of this issue. Or that's the way Jesus is presenting himself in this story. But John begins his gospel with 8 chapters of Jesus doing miracles and signs and showing people things. But then he has Jesus also saying, like, you don't believe because you saw. Right. So, which one is it?
I've been confused by that. Or it's conflicting to me.
Yeah. So entering this story already with a little bit of healthy skepticism about.
It's like, wait a minute. Why did you have to wait to let him die? Did you wait to let him die so that the miracle could occur? Like, this is a biggie if we're scaling our miracles. This is not water to wine. This is death to life.
Yeah. And it goes into this concept of the necessity of bad things happening in order for God's glory to be revealed. That's a very sticky theological concept.
Yes. And I don't like it.
I don't either.
I just don't like it. The bleeding heart in me doesn't like it, or I don't even know what. The everything happens for a reason idea. I don't appreciate. There's lots of reasons why.
Well, the truth of it is that not everything happens for a reason. There is not always a reason.
Right.
We like to assign a reason to things. We like to try to figure out what the reason is, but sometimes there isn't.
Right.
A cause that we can identify or a link in the chain.
Right.
That person deserves it because they did that. Right. That's what my issue is that becomes a very slippery slope into that person's blind because their parents sinned, which happens earlier in the gospel. Right.
And this whole concept, there's whole segments of Christianity where the concept of suffering as necessary or mandatory to faith gets very dangerous, right?
Yeah, because what it does is it leads people to seek out suffering.
Yes.
Or to
self-injury or
to not recognize when suffering is no longer holy. When the suffering in and of itself becomes a mean in and of itself.
Yes.
My husband grew up in a tradition that values I wouldn't say suffering, but it definitely puts priorities on being uncomfortable and
depravity.
Depriving yourself of worldly pleasure and of worldly of the ease. They just the distrust of something being easy.
Right.
And in the Amish tradition, they choose to make life hard. They find in that a holiness and.
Right.
It's not like they decided horses and buggies were the optimal level of technology.
Right.
And that's what God decided.
Of the gods.
It's more about intentionally making life difficult in order to make yourself more holy.
Right.
And and so that's where I get concerned about lifting up suffering as a holy thing is because it becomes the means to the end as opposed to something that we all go through.
Right.
And
then all of a sudden you start tallying whether or not your suffering was big enough or was it as good as that suffering. And I've fallen into that guilty trap of knowing that I have lived a life of white upper middle class privilege, and that means that I can't possibly engage in certain conversations around hardship because my hardships haven't been as hard as other people's hardships. And that is dangerous thinking in a lot of ways.
Right. Your problems are your problems.
Right.
But just because you're not wandering the streets eating leftover food out of trash cans does not mean that those aren't really problems for you, right? And so we can start getting into these hierarchies of suffering. And what I tend to see a lot is I have a lot of conversations with people who are like, well, what did I do to deserve this?
Right.
And that's where my heart is like, well, you didn't do anything. You
Right.
did nothing to deserve this. Like Lazarus did nothing.
Right.
There is no point in this story where Jesus says, well, Lazarus sinned for 6 days,
Right.
and like,
So we need to let him die first.
so we need to let him die first, right?
Right.
That is not the purpose of the suffering in here. And so the illness comes first. And so it's,
Right.
I think that's just something we need to hold in the back of our heads, is like this idea that the illness is not in and of itself holy, but
Right.
it is sort of something that God can use
Right.
for good.
You know, and as you were talking, it also made me think about the flip side of this is like the anti-prosperity gospel story as well, from the standpoint of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus clearly had a close relationship to Jesus, to the Son of God. And yet, their relationship didn't buy them anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's not if I just am faithful enough, then good things will always befall me rather than bad stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe this is like a leveling of the playing field to show, in a certain respect, it's life happens to every single one of us, regardless of your favor with any particular entity. And God being in and of everything doesn't change based on your suffering circumstance, your entitled circumstance. Like, maybe there's something in that maybe that's also part of the purpose is favor doesn't necessarily buy you life.
Right.
I don't know.
Like being good
Right.
is not equated necessarily to having an easy life.
Right.
That's not how
Right.
how this works. Like what we do and how we live our life doesn't necessarily have an impact on the events and circumstances of our
Right.
life. Right. There's not an equal equation.
Right.
Because bad things happen to good people.
Yep.
And good things happen to bad people.
Right.
And that's the reality of the broken world that we live in.
Right.
And that makes us sad, and we can
Yeah.
grieve that, but we also need to acknowledge that that's just reality, and stop assigning blame or value or shame
Yeah.
to these things, because
Yes. And stop waiting on the God that has the magic wand to fix it. And that, like, the Santa Claus God creeps in to entirely too much of our thinking, including this of, well, why didn't Jesus go faster and not let him actually die?
yeah,
Well, what are we talking about? Let him. Like, where the magic wand concept, I start to
Yeah.
realize is filtering into my thinking in this, is that it's not the let him, don't let him. It's what's the presence in the process, right?
yeah, and the allowance of the illness to continue is not a sign of God's favor.
Right.
Jesus loved Lazarus.
Right.
Jesus cries after Lazarus dies. Jesus held Lazarus in his heart and in his mind, I'm sure, during those days when he couldn't be there with him. And so it's not about whether or not God loves you or doesn't love you, or whether you're close to God or not close to God.
Right.
The continuation of the illness is separate entirely from
Right.
anything we do.
Right.
And so separating those two things
Yep.
is important, because the Bible clearly tells us that the wages of sin is death. The outcome of human life is death, and that is just part of the process.
Right.
And no matter how much money we donate to the church, how many hours we serve other people, how much good stuff we do, does not save us from that ultimate,
Right.
nor does it hasten the end if we do bad things.
Right.
Like, none of those things have an impact on
Right.
the length of our life.
Right. And somehow we're desperate to connect God to, we're desperate to put God into the box of if we just, or if we just don't. Yeah.
And we're comfortable with deaths that seem to have a reason. Like,
Yeah.
we're really
Yeah.
good at, like, well, that person had lung cancer because they smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day, right?
Yep.
Like, we're really comfortable with that. It's when the Sunday school teacher gets lung cancer from radon that was undetected in their house. Like, that stuff is what throws us off, because
Right.
we think there's an equation,
Right.
like that those things.
And our concept of fair and unfair must be God's concept of fair and unfair as well.
Yeah. And justice and injustice,
Right.
and all of those concepts are we assigned to God?
Right.
And I think why these passages make us uncomfortable is it reminds us that God has a completely different view
Yeah.
of death and illness than we do.
And this harkens back, our pub theology discussion last week was a doozy, I thought. Of course, there's such beautiful talk that came out of it, but this whole concept of discerning and living out God's will. Mm-hmm. How do we know that? Because, and one of the things that came up from one of the members of the group was, well, think about the folks in the Civil War. Both sides of the Civil War genuinely believed that they were doing God's will in what they were doing. So that just kind of upends the apple cart of maybe it's a humbling experience to say, don't ever think that you've got it figured out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to see that as we continue reading. The disciples are very confused.
Yes.
And so Jesus says, after 2 days, he said to his disciples, let's return to Judea again. Now they ran out of Judea because Jesus' life had been threatened.
Right.
The disciples replied, Rabbi, the Jewish opposition wants to stone you, but you want to go back. Mm-hmm. And we should read the Jewish opposition there as the leadership, not all Jewish people. Jesus answered, aren't there 12 hours in the day? Whoever walks in the day doesn't stumble because they see the light of the world. But whoever walks in the night does stumble because the light isn't in them. He continued, our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I am going in order to wake him up. The disciples said, Lord, if he's sleeping, he will get well. They thought Jesus meant that Lazarus was in a deep sleep. But Jesus had spoken about Lazarus' death. Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died. For your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there so that you can believe. Let's go to him. Then Thomas, the one called Didymus, said to the other disciples, let us go too so that we may die with Jesus. You're making a frowny face.
It's just fascinating. Number one, I love the fact, Jesus, what? Are there 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime, I'm like, please stop. Had I been a disciple, I would have been the jerk that was like, stop with the metaphors, Jesus, and just say what you're saying. Say it.
Yeah.
For the love, I am clearly not capable of understanding the veiled language with which you use.
This is a high-stress situation.
Right?
I just want an answer.
Clear, pragmatic words from you.
Yeah.
But obviously,
that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
Right.
Are there 12, what must they have thought when Jesus says, why are you going back to Judea? They're going to kill you. And Jesus says there are 12 hours of the day.
Thank you for that fact.
Very helpful.
Were we going with a Quizlet or something? Did you hear the words that I said or what?
Yeah, again, so this goes back again to Jesus's view of death is so totally different than the humans around him.
And maybe I love that maybe we can start looking at it from the standpoint of Jesus talks in God language, not in human language, and therefore that is why we can't figure it out, because we just can't hear it.
This is a God thing. This is God, talking to God's self, and clearly, Paul's metaphor of we see through a mirror darkly, right? Clearly there are things.
Mirror moments.
So every once in a while, I think we could just be like, Jesus, what you saying, friend?
Gonna need some layman's terms.
Yeah, and then he says, our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I'm going in order to wake him up.
Why sleeping? Right.
Which the very human response of well, great.
Right. Sounds like he's resting.
Yeah.
That can't be bad.
Rest is the best way to get better.
Actually, he's dead.
Yeah. What I mean is he's dead. So that takes some unpacking. So
yeah.
It wasn't that the Jews of the first century had a concept of the resurrection of the body, of the dead. But that didn't happen until way later. So Jesus wasn't totally introducing the concept of resurrection and life eternal and all that stuff. But what they did have was a concept of soul sleep. And so what happens when you die is that your soul goes into some sort of a stasis situation.
Huh.
And so in that time period of rest or sleeping, you're waiting for the Messiah to come. You're waiting for the resurrection.
So the Catholic concept of purgatory?
Very similar, except you're not in purgatory. You're working off your sin.
I was going to say you're not working off a debt of some kind. Okay.
It's more they abolished this concept, but Catholicism pre-Vatican II would say that had something called limbo infantum, and so What that was for babies who died before they were baptized.
Right.
And they couldn't quite say, like, those babies are going to hell, because that was too much.
Right. Right.
Especially when infant mortality was really high,
Right.
And so they had this idea of limbo, where those babies would just wait until the second coming. They were sort of in a stasis, like
Gotcha.
they weren't in heaven,
Right.
because you got to be in that theology. You had to be baptized to go to heaven, but they weren't in hell either, because they
Right.
hadn't.
That just felt too harsh.
That just felt too harsh. Yeah.
Right.
And so it was a pastoral
Okay.
response to that idea. They talk about it differently now, but that was sort of the idea. So limbo is that in between state,
Right.
where they're just sort of like, you may have seen like cartoons where they're just sort of like floating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the idea.
Like our ghost concept, right?
Yeah.
You're not there,
Yeah.
you're not here, you're in between.
Yeah. So that's sort of the idea.
Okay.
And so Jesus may have been
Alluding to
that concept
Okay.
here. But the disciples clearly thought he meant that he was resting.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. Which
Okay.
we all know, like, the best thing you can do when you're sick is
It's to rest.
to rest. And so it's not an outlandish thing. But then Jesus very, like, not pastorally says, nope,
He's dead.
he's dead.
And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there.
Right. Like, this is not, like, again, not fuzzy Jesus. Like, we talked
Right.
about John,
Right.
Jesus and John being a little cold
Right.
and a little harsh.
Right.
Um,
Very to the point.
Yeah. And so, like, the disciples are confused. And then they're like, oh, well, great. Now they're excited. They're like, yeah, Lazarus is fine. And Jesus was like, nope, dead.
Right.
So,
And by the way, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have believed me had you not seen me do this thing. that
right,
I'm gonna go
exactly.
do.
Right. And so, I mean, this is very, a very weird using of his friend Lazarus to make a point.
Right. Although at this stage of the game, Jesus is probably pretty darn tired of people not believing. So I can understand the frustration. If in fact that's what this is.
I mean,
But
it's a very human story at this
Yeah.
point. Like, the disciples are tired and weary, and the high of the miracles are starting to wear off because he hasn't done any in a while.
Right.
They're being chased around with men with rocks.
Right.
And Jesus is being obtuse and obscure and unkind. And at this point, you can see, like, you couldn't blame the disciples for being like,
Right.
no, I think I'm good.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
Which is a very human response. How many times in our
Absolutely.
lives are we like, I'm frustrated with Jesus. I'm frustrated with God.
Yep.
You're not giving me the answers that I want.
Right.
I think I'm ready to walk.
And I feel like, particularly if your theology wants, like, if you're ascribing to what I believe we as Presbyterians want to do, which is engage the scripture with our hearts, our souls, and our minds, it's not easy. And every once in a while, I can understand the ease of, like, super fundamental black and white evangelical thinking of it is this or it is this. And here is what you do. Here's the boxes that you check. Because, you grow weary of continuing to not know or
Not get a straight
not
answer.
see clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a friend who talked to you like this,
Right.
you would not be
Right.
friends with them anymore.
Right.
Because
If you constantly talk to me in metaphors and stories and parables that I'm supposed to cipher out, but I can't,
yeah,
no, we're just not going to chat.
we're not going to chat anymore. Do you want to read the next little section?
Yep. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Wow, he let him go for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Mary heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, very human, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is come into the world.
Okay, so Martha comes out to Jesus. Martha's clearly the doer, like the Kool-Aid man of the relationship, right? Like, I'm going to run through the wall. I'm going to tell Jesus what I think.
Right.
And she goes out to Jesus and very, like, correctly says,
had you been here, this wouldn't have happened.
Let's be fair. By the time Jesus got the message, Lazarus was already dead.
Right.
So,
right.
If my math is correct, because he waited 2 days after he got the message,
right.
and Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days.
Which means he probably died
before
the 4 days.
So he would have died 4 days prior.
Right.
Or 3 days, whatever, 5 days. It would have been
right.
before Jesus got the message. So the 2 days he waited, not a big deal, I guess, in retrospect. But Martha is clearly upset and angry for good reason. Because, like, she asked for help, and she did not get the help that she looked for.
Right. Right.
Because she was taught that whatever you ask God, God gives to you.
Right.
And so that sort of goes back to our previous conversation of, like, this idea that there's an equivalence of some sort, or if we ask and you shall receive, right? And we like that faith and that Jesus a lot better than this Jesus.
Absolutely.
And so there's the anger here is valid.
Yep.
And so Jesus responds with, "Your brother will rise again."
She's like, I know.
I'm still angry because he's not here.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I get it. I know that, but, like, that doesn't make my grief less.
Right. We're not talking about then. We're not talking about that big resurrection. I'm talking about right now.
Right now.
Right here, right now.
Yeah. I asked for your help and you didn't give it to me.
Right.
And so I think we want to validate that that is how we feel when a loved one dies in our lives. It's like, even if they're 98 and they've lived I did a funeral for a guy who was 101 one time, and his son was absolutely devastated.
Right.
So, like, there's never a time where we're like,
this was a good thing.
This was a good thing.
Right.
I mean, there are times with, like, Alzheimer's and things like that where it's like they're out of their misery.
Right.
But there's
still that missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still grieve and we're still angry and we're still upset and we're like, we still expected Jesus to do something.
Right.
And as long as that person's here, there's that little bit of hope.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think we want to stop and recognize that her anger is a normal part of the grieving process, and her frustration is a normal part of this process. And so we want to recognize that.
Yeah.
What do you do with Jesus' answer here?
If I'm Martha, it feels rather catty. It makes me wonder, like, when did the concept of the intervening God begin? Like, when did we start to believe or think that God should and would intervene in all of these circumstances that we don't like? I don't know. Is that do you know? Or is that, maybe that's just an individual thing, like not everybody.
No,
has
that's
that sense,
a very much, so for a long time, the concept of God was something like what they would have called the immovable mover or the watchmaker.
Yeah.
Those are the two images of God. And so for a very, very long time, there was the idea of the immovable mover, essentially that God was closed off and cold-hearted and was just moving pieces around on a board. Like, when your kid played with like figurines, like my son has little Bluey figures and he plays Bluey all the time.
Yep.
And he's just moving those people around and making stories with them and, like, having a good old time.
Yeah.
And there was that image of God, like we were the Bluey figures, and that God is just moving us around.
It's kind of a Zeus thing.
Yeah,
almost.
very much. That comes from Greek philosophy. Yeah. And there's like a stoicism there of, like, God the immovable mover. So God's moving things around and playing with us, essentially.
Right.
And has no regard for humanity whatsoever. But is actively involved in the world, in the events of the world.
Right.
Then there's the other idea of the watchmaker God, where God sets all the things into motion.
And
God created the world and then was like,
have at it.
Have at it, right?
I did my part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also was another stream of Greek philosophy. And so we have to remember, in the West, Christianity is heavily influenced by Greek philosophy.
Right.
Because the church came up through Rome. Rome stole Greek philosophy to make their own.
Right.
They did not invent their own philosophy. That always fascinated me. Rome was like,
Just kidding. We're going to take this.
Just going to take yours.
Yep.
Like yours is cooler. We're just going to rename everything so it looks
Yes.
like ours.
Right. Right. We even could like steal your statues and stick them
Exactly.
in our palaces.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
literally just
Yeah,
took
yeah.
statues of Zeus and renamed them Jupiter. Like,
Yep.
I mean, there was
Yep.
no attempt to hide it.
Right.
And so a lot of our Christianity comes through that lens
Yeah.
of Greek philosophy.
Yeah.
Now, in the East,
Mm-hmm.
Christianity in the East has a much more kind vision of God, I would say. A much more, their gods, their ancestral gods were involved in the world, actively involved in the world, but it wasn't to cause mischief.
Right.
It was to be a guide, to
Interesting.
be a resource.
Yeah.
And so you may have seen like in Mulan where they have the house with the ancestor
The
gods.
ancestors. Yes. Yes.
That's very much how they would have thought
Right.
about God as a concept.
Interesting.
And so
Huh.
that vision of God is,
Yeah.
is a completely different,
Right.
probably more biblically accurate
Interesting.
version of
Right.
God. And so African Christianity and Asian Christianity do not have to actively fight against this idea of a cold, capricious God who's just playing
Right.
with us and messing with us.
Interesting.
And so
Huh.
that informs our Christianity
Yeah.
because we have that mindset of this God who is removed in some way
Yeah.
from us and is not invested in our individual lives
Right.
except to mess with us.
Right.
And so we're always struggling with that concept of that. Now, American individualism moved in. And so that is where we get into real trouble,
Yep.
is the idea that God is either so intimately involved in our lives that everything that happens to us
Right.
is directly at the hands of God,
Right.
or a God who is so removed from us that we are individually responsible for every act of faith.
Right.
And so that's where we tend to, the extremes that we tend to,
Right.
to go
And
to.
Isn't it funny? Like those two extremes are kind of the two ways that you approach this Lazarus story.
Yeah.
Instead of that middle, like it's hard to figure out the kind middle ground of God in this story
Yeah.
with our tendencies to lean
Yeah.
in one of those extremes.
Yeah. And so here Jesus he's saying, I'm the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die. We read this at every funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because there's a reminder that life is found in death. That death is not the end of the story,
Right.
and that it's a part of life.
Right.
It's not a separate event that happens to us outside of life.
Right.
And so we have to stop thinking about death as a punishment, I think, is where
Right.
what is helpful to me in this framework. Death is not something that happens uniquely to us because of things that we did in our lives, or a punishment that God is sending towards us, or that God is causing us to experience pain and loss.
Right.
Jesus is saying here, like, no, life and death are intimately connected. They are a part of our lives.
And he's the link between the two.
Yep. I'm the glue that's holding this together.
Interesting.
I've also always wondered what our institutionalization of death has done to our understanding of death.
Right.
Because when people die in hospitals and in hospice centers, which are great, I'm not anti-hospice, but they're not
Right.
dying like surrounded by, like, the way that they used to die. Like, you would die at home and everybody
Right.
would have seen that from
Right.
like in a multi-generational,
Right.
your 3-year-old would have seen,
Right.
you know, like, so death was a much more of a part of our lives.
Right.
We've separated it in some ways.
Right.
I wonder what that does to how we understand the story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to skip down to
Yeah.
when Jesus saw her crying, and also the people who had come with her crying also, he was deeply disturbed and troubled. He asked, "Where have you laid him?" And they replied, "Lord, come and see." And Jesus began to cry. And so they said, "See how much he loved him." But some of them said, "He healed the eyes of the man born blind. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying?" I mean, I don't think there's anything to, like we've covered, I think,
Right,
sort of that,
right.
except I do want to note that Jesus is moved.
Right.
This is not an immovable mover.
I was going to say this, I think people love that Jesus wept is, the shortest shortest verse in the Bible as a little bit of a quiz question.
Yeah.
But I like how human it brings us back away from the pragmatic and the cold. It's like John is like throwing a nugget in there to be like, but remember. Yeah.
It also shows that Jesus changes his plan because he is moved by the grief that he sees before him.
Right.
And also their expectation that he could have done something.
Right. Again, back to the very, very human,
Yeah.
we know you can. Why didn't you?
Jesus was deeply disturbed again when he came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone covered the entrance, foreshadowing. Jesus said, "Remove the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, "Lord, the smell will be awful. He's been dead 4 days." Okay, practicalities of
Good
life,
point.
right? Jesus replied, "Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory?" That's an issue statement. We'll come back to that. So they removed the stone. Jesus looked up and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. I know you always hear me. I say this for the benefit of the crowd standing here, so that they will believe that you sent me." Having said this, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his feet bound and his hands tied and his face covered with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Untie him and let him go." And therefore many of the Jews who came with Mary and saw what Jesus did believed. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Okay, first let's just recognize it's a ridiculous situation.
Right.
Lazarus comes out of the tomb, face covered, feet bound, and hands tied. So is he hopping?
I was just about to say, the visual is comical.
Yeah.
Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is.
And does he still smell?
Right.
Like that's another question I have.
Right. Definitely can't smell like roses.
Right. Untie him and let him go. Like, no, he smells gross. Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see God's glory? This is where we get into trouble. Because what does that tell you?
Right. It's the seeing is believing.
Yeah. And if I believe, good things will happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Believing means, yay, me, I'm not going to have any issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so contradictory to the rest of the story. And so that's the context matters.
Right.
So what do you think he's trying to say there? And I wonder, like, believe and trust often go together, or often are the same root word. I'd have to go back and look in the Greek, but I'm wondering if this is pistis or faith. If you had faith, or if you trusted me, that you would see.
Right.
And so it's not an intellectual assent, I think, so much as like I've been telling you.
Right.
I told you back at the beginning of the chapter this wasn't death, right?
Right.
That's an interesting question. I would want to stew over some.
Right.
I'm interested your reaction to the different reactions they have to the raising of Lazarus. So some of the group believed, or came to trust in Jesus, and some of them went to the Pharisees.
Well, it's like, I think about it from, I know we're.
Oh, you're good. I think Paul's probably here.
I think about it from a standpoint of like a modern day. If I think about some situation that feels as gravitationally huge as this in today's world, what would I do? Like, there's a dude with schizophrenia who's talking, and somebody had put this dude behind a rock. I'm going to go get the authorities because this feels scary.
Or is it a trick? Like, did Lazarus and Jesus get together to trick these people?
Right. Like, I have to, this is where I love the idea of putting yourself in the different situation, putting yourself in the different characters of the story and saying, be honest. What would I honestly feel or do or think in this situation? And that adds the layers of complexity to say you can't see this singularly sided.
Yeah.
And truly dig out the faith that I think we're supposed to dig out of this.
Yeah.
That the believing is a struggle.
Yeah.
It was a struggle then. Jesus keeps reminding folks, like, y'all are struggling, and it continues to be a struggle now. So
And I wonder,
know.
I wonder if I'm assigning ill intent to the folks who went to the Pharisees, because I know how the rest of the story
Right,
goes. Like I
because
know
we
what the
already
result
know.
is.
Yep.
But it's possible that they just went to the Pharisees to,
Be like, holy crap, we just saw this amazing thing.
yeah,
Because these were supposed to be their trusted leaders, their faithful leaders,
Yeah.
the ones who directed them to God.
yeah. And is it the Pharisees who then turn it into something else?
I think yes.
Yeah.
Knowing what comes next in this story and
Yes.
having sat with it for a while,
Yeah.
my answer is yes.
So,
But then again, what's their impetus? What's their MO behind doing that? Well, Rome is up our tail over here, and they might just come and annihilate us. And aren't we supposed to be safeguarding our people?
and yeah, so I wonder, like, does this, in our situation, when we see things happen, we see videos of events happening,
Yep.
right? Everybody sees
Yes.
the version of events that they are predisposed to see.
Yeah.
And so this reaction to something happening in front of their eyes that was unbelievable or that they couldn't
Right.
process feels pretty normal, because some people are gonna
Right.
see one thing and some
Yep.
people are gonna see another thing,
Yep.
and that's gonna define how we react to it. And so
Right.
this is just another very human response to an unbelievable event happening.
Right.
Because I see, like, I mean, there have been videos we've been seeing on the
Right.
news, and I see something, and I'm like, well, that's clearly this. And then I had a friend who saw the same video and saw
Yep.
something different,
Right.
and they just as clearly felt something different. And so
Right.
it's like a recognition of the human response of
Right.
um,
Right.
different, of just not being able to process things,
Right.
and immediately trying to figure out, like, how to assign
Right.
value or sense or reasonableness to something that is outside of human
Right.
understanding. Yeah.
And it reminds us that the faithful response is possibly taking a beat.
Yeah.
That it does not necessarily, again, like going back to like the videos that we've seen and having very clear, this is not saying that there are not universal humanity standards that we all need to ascribe to and live by. It is saying take a beat before before creating a narrative
Yeah.
for yourself around something.
That's
and make
it.
sure
Yeah.
make sure that your response to it and your understanding of it is both thoughtful and faithful.
Yeah. Yeah. And how easy it is for us to start down a road
Yeah.
before we really know
Yep.
where that road's going to take us. And so we need to be careful about, like, how confident we are
Yep.
when we start heading down that road.
Right.
That's the road that at the end, Jesus is going to be on that road. Like,
Yep.
I think we often choose the road that Jesus is not on.
Right. Right.
And we're very confidently marching in the wrong
Yeah.
direction.
And we come out railing, guns blazing, arms flying like Martha.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
And it's Mary who's the one who touches Jesus' heart, who
Right.
quietly says, like,
Right.
my brother died. Yeah. So what's your one takeaway this week?
Gosh. Again, I constantly get struck by the complexity of understanding faith and the difficulty of understanding and living faith. If you want to truly do it,
Yeah.
you have to wrestle a lot. And how connected. Reading the scripture again and again and again, I mean, the whole idea of the living word just becomes very plain in that we have connected the raising of Lazarus to modern day videotaping of intense events around our country. I mean, connect scripture. There is a connection. It is living, it is breathing, and it is our job to consistently go back again and again and again and see what the word is, because it's new every time.
I'm reminded of how judgmental we are about our reactions to things,
Yeah.
and how judgmental we are about other people's reactions to events. And in this story, we see so many people struggling to understand something that is outside of their realm of understanding.
Yeah.
And I don't think Jesus was trying to purposely be opaque or
Right.
make it challenging. I think Jesus is trying to explain things
Right.
that are outside of our human comprehension
Yep.
and knowledge. And he's doing it in ways that he thinks can help clarify things.
Right.
But there's only so much of something we can grasp.
Right.
And so being careful and thoughtful about how we assign blame and responsibility and judgment to people's reactions to events
Right.
that are traumatic and difficult for us, and
Right.
and to offer ourselves some grace
Right.
and some other people some grace. So
Yeah.
it's a big challenge, I
It
think,
is.
for us.
Gentleness.
Yeah, gentleness is not our strong suit.
No.
Yeah, so next time we're going to be moving on to Caiaphas and his story, I think. No, I'm sorry, foot washing. Next time we're looking at Jesus washing some feet. We're going to hear the challenge of what a God who kneels and washes our feet means for our faith. So come back next week and we'll dig into that.
Yay.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.